Hello, everyone. Dr. Jennifer Teal here, and I wanted to provide you with a brief introduction into the HCPCS coding manual. So HCPCS, we pronounce that HCPCS, and this is another one of the coding manuals that you'll use in your coding career. It's important with any of the coding manuals that you get familiar with the layout of the actual code book so that you know where to find things. That's going to make the coding process much easier. You don't want to spend time fumbling around learning how to use the coding manual. So take some time to review it cover to cover just to get somewhat of a lay of the land. Now, your HCPCS codes, these are the codes that are for supplies and services that you're going to use to capture things that are not covered in CPT. If there is a CPT code for that same procedure, service, supply, etc., you'll typically use that CPT code instead of a HCPCS code unless there's a payer-specific requirement for the HCPCS code. I'm just using the Optum version of the HCPCS coding manual, but there are many publisher editions out there. And I'm just demoing with the 2024 version, but always make sure that you're using a current version of the coding manual. So with all coding manuals, there's usually a little bit of an intro in the front that gives you kind of the history of the HCPCS or the code set that you're looking at, in this case, HCPCS, how to use the actual code set, referencing the index, any kind of special information that you might need to know for this particular code set. In this case, it's telling you what is covered in the appendices. And a couple of the appendices that are particularly helpful in this case are Appendix 1 and Appendix 2. Appendix 1 is going to be your table of drugs, and Appendix 2 is going to be the list of modifiers. They do have some additional appendices that are helpful, such as abbreviations and a glossary. So just, again, take time to review and get familiar with everything that the book has to offer. As with any of the code books, there's also a legend for what the symbols represent. If there's an icon next to a code, it's important that you understand what that symbol represents. Now with HCPCS, your index comes in the front of the book. So this is your alphabetic index. This is how you look up your terms. And then the colored sections are the tabular list. So similar to what you would do with CPT coding, although with CPT, the index is in the back. In this case, you're going to look up whatever term or supply or procedure, whatever it is that you're looking for. You always start in the index, and then that will give you your reference so that you know where to go in the tabular list. And the tabular list in this case is divided up into sections, and you'll notice the colored sections. We have an indicator here of what is in that section. So your transportation and ambulance services are all of your A codes. So HCPCS arranges them by letters. So your A codes are your ambulance. Notice that these do not have any kind of a decimal in the code formatting. It is simply 5 alphanumeric characters, no decimal. And as we move along, the next colored section are your B codes, enteral and peri-enteral therapy. Okay. And then your next section is going to be your C codes, and that's your outpatient PPS. And then we have the purple, your DMEs, your durable medical equipments. This is where you're going to find supplies. As this image indicates here, you see things like braces, crutches, anything like that, splints, any of your DME, wheelchairs, you name it, you're going to find that in here. So use your index to find what it is that you're needing to code. And again, sometimes there's more than one way to look it up. So if you're not finding what you're looking for using one term, then perhaps you need to rephrase. So in this case, you know, if I was looking for a sling, I could go under the biological, the anatomical area of arm, and then sling, and then it gives me some options. And then if I go, let's just test this out and see if we can find the same thing listed under the entry of sling. So if we go to the S's, you'll notice right here, there's an entry for sling, and then we have some different anatomical areas. But in this case, sling, there is no entry for arm. So our better option was to start with arm. Okay, so that's what you're going to do is just, if you're not finding what you need one way, try another way to locate what you're looking for. Oftentimes your HCPC codes are used in conjunction with the actual CPT codes. So for example, if somebody comes in for any kind of an injection or immunization or that sort of thing, the procedure of giving the injection is going to be captured with a CPT code, but the substance that is being injected is going to be captured with a HCPC code for that supply. So a lot of supplies are going to be in your HCPC codes, and your J codes are where you're going to find your drug codes. So if we look, J, that's this blue section here, drug administration other than oral. So other than oral, so IV medications, injectables, that sort of thing. And then you're going to also have chemotherapy drugs is a subsection within the J codes. So use these margins to help you navigate your way around. That's very helpful. Now I'm going to just give you a quick overview of Appendix 1, because again, this is one of the more helpful ones in terms of finding your substances, your drugs. And it gives you the typical route of administration, and it references you to a code as well. So you can come in here and you can look up your drug name, verify the route of administration, and then it will lead you to your code. Never code from any of the appendices or the indexes. What you need to do is always verify the code in the tabular list, because the tabular list is going to have more detail. When you go to the tabular list, that's when you're going to find the full description. And that's when you're going to see, for in this instance, how much of the substance. So let me zoom in a little bit here so that you can see this a little bit better. And I just picked this one at random, but you see that it's an injection and it is 2 milligrams. And then it gives you a little, use this code for, and it gives you the trade name versus the generic name. And a lot of the drug codes are going to do that. Use this for, and then it gives you the trade name versus that generic name. So that's a helpful tip for you as well. So these are your drugs and your tabular list for your drugs, and then the table of drugs to help you kind of find where it's at. Because sometimes you don't know, maybe the provider is using just the generic name and you don't know what the trade name is, or vice versa. Drugs.com is actually a pretty good resource for looking up drugs if you're not familiar with them, if you need to know, what body system that drug is for, because some of them are listed by that. Drugs.com, there are other out there. So just find resources that are helpful for you in the coding process, and make sure that you create your own resource list for things like researching types of procedures so that you have a good understanding of how procedures are performed, researching types of drugs, that sort of thing. The other appendix that I wanted to mention is Appendix 2, which is your modifiers. Now, these modifiers in the HCPC book can be used with either the HCPC codes or the CPT codes. So CPT, the CPT book, has modifiers as well, and it has the CPT modifiers, but that book also lists some of the commonly used HCPC codes, but it is not an all-inclusive list of HCPC code modifiers. This appendix is the all-inclusive list of the HCPC modifiers. And so that's what you're going to see here is just a listing. And some of them are to help you determine exact location. So for example, this one here, let me zoom in for you real quick. You'll see this one is all about the hand, right? And so left hand and what digit on the hand. So left hand second digit, left hand third, left hand fourth, and then you've got right hand thumb, right hand second digit. So it simply adds specificity to wherever the procedure is being performed. And that's helpful because say that you were performing the same procedure, but maybe it was done on more than one finger in this case, this will indicate the specificity to tell the payer, no, we actually did perform 2 complete separate procedures on 2 complete separate fingers, and this is how we're going to indicate that. So that's a good example of when you're going to use the HCPCS modifiers. And with modifiers, I always recommend, whether it's the CPT modifiers or the HCPCS modifiers, is that you simply read through the list and read through it a few times. And if you need to make flashcards to help not necessarily memorize, but become familiar with what they cover, because you need something to trigger your mind to know, oh, wait a minute, I think there's a modifier for that. Let me go look. Now, if you're using an encoder software, sometimes they will prompt you for things like modifiers, and sometimes they won't, depending on the built-in edit checks, what system you're using and whatnot. So the list is not, it's just 1, 2, 3.5 pages long. So again, read through it. Similar to the finger issue that I just used as an example, you see here that we have foot as well. So we have the toes, left foot, second digit, left foot, third digit. So again, for location and for specificity, there's going to be some modifiers that are going to be specific to anesthesia and who performed the anesthesia, whether it was the anesthesiologist, whether it was a CRNA. There's physical status modifiers for anesthesia services. Here we have, again, a location type. Let me let it focus for a minute here. It got out of focus with my finger being in the way. All right, so what we have here in this one is your eyelids. So this gives you the specificity about which eyelid in particular. Registered dietitian. So if it's a dietetic service and they want to indicate that it's actually a registered dietitian that is performing it, maybe that's a payer requirement that they'll only cover that particular nutrition service if it was performed by a registered dietitian. Well, then this is how you would come in here and indicate that. So again, just review and read through these to become familiar with it. But I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time. I just wanted to give you a brief introduction into the HCPCS coding manual and how to navigate your way around it and the types of things just to be on the lookout for. So I hope you found that helpful. And with that, I am going to go ahead and sign off.